And welcome back. Now we are ready for chapter 4. Yes, let's do it. Okay, so conflict. Conflict is gonna happen. Conflict is the process which begins when one party perceives that the other has frustrated something of concern to them. So our concern is goal conflicts that occur when a group pursues goals different from other groups. All right, let me put that in English. People are going to have disagreements. In my view, you allow them to work it out at the lowest level until it impacts the project. That's really remains our focus. I had bosses that had to get into everything. No need. Let people work stuff out. It's okay. It's a maturing process. And so part of the process is identifying stakeholders and then analyzing them. We need to know what makes them tick. What is their level of power? What is their level of interest? And then continually update that assessment throughout the project. We call that a power and interest grid. There are other versions of this. Power and influence grid, for example. But power and interest grid is really part and parcel what we're talking about. Notice we want to analyze people in terms of the power grid from low to high on the left and their interest in our project from low to high on the X or horizontal scale. And in doing that, it tells us how we should deal with various stakeholders to reduce conflict along the way. If they're in the top left, we want to keep them satisfied. If they plot to the top right, we want to manage them closely. Maybe if they have low power but high interest, we just want to keep them informed, etc. along the way. And then I can create a commitment assessment matrix, right? How did these groups, remember the definition of a stakeholder, an individual, group, or organization that is influenced by or can influence the output or decision of a project. So we want to look at these stakeholder groups and see how we can move them from their current level of commitment, we call it X here, to a desired level of commitment. Notice that not everybody needs to be moved, right? You have limited time as a project manager, limited energy. Focus on what needs to be moved. Notice administration and patients' families, that's their desired level and they're there. We're good, right? Notice you'll have to do a lot of work on radiologists. And that is in the current terms. If you read PMI's literature, the Project Management Institutes, that will be called the stakeholder engagement mechanism, right? So it makes sense that this next slide is about managing stakeholder engagement, right? We want to make sure we have their commitment. And just because we have it, we can never assume it. We want to continue to develop that commitment throughout the project. Constant communication with stakeholders at the various levels. It depends on where they fall into the grid. Do we want to keep them satisfied, closely manage, keep informed, or monitor, right? We don't want to annoy them, but we want to hit the right tone every time. And we want to do it in a proactive way that helps to resolve issues in advance, right? And so regardless of all of our efforts, conflict is going to happen in the R&D, maybe in market introduction, as a product or project grows, as we mature, or as we close out, right? And so we want to consider Tuckman's concept of forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. In the context of the project life cycle, because just because you got through storming and forming, storming, and norming in one phase, you may have to go through it again in follow-on phases of your life cycle. Some of the phases listed here on this slide. So, and of course, there can be categories of conflict which may help you break it down into useful pieces along the way that are useful for resolution, right? We want to clarify uncertainty. We want to address interpersonal conflict, again, once it's impacting the project. And we want to make sure that we have a unified set of goals and expectations, clarifying roles and responsibilities. Regular communication with the team often help reduce conflict along the way. Again, Tuckman stages: forming, storming, norming, and performing. It makes sense then that conflict would center around the confusion of starting a new project. It's one reason I'll issue an executive summary of the business documents to the new team members. And if they arrive after the charter, I'll make sure they have a copy of the charter or other key artifacts and plug them in right away. And so in handling project formation conflict, we want to make sure that we set roles, responsibilities, and objectives, including technical objectives, and make sure that we have commitment from senior management along the way, right? Make sure that the team is aware of the objectives and the priority of the project in their work life cycle, etc., right? And then we're going to, of course, build up the project, like developing the charter and then beginning the detailed planning. Again, through these various life cycle phases, expect more conflicts, even if you've resolved them in a previous phase, right? In fact, learn lessons yourself from those previous phases so you can clarify them up front in a new phase to make sure that everybody is working in the same context, okay? And the same goes through these other various phases. You can read through this in the literature yourself. The slides really stand alone, right? Now, this is where, though, it all comes to a head. What's in your toolkit to deal with these conflicts? And here is a set of tools you can do. Competing, avoiding, collaborating, accommodating, or compromising are options for that. In fact, the literature that we're reading from in this course gives us how to use these conflict resolution strategies in figure 4-3. If somebody is on the x-axis on cooperative to cooperative, or on the vertical axis assertive to unassertive, right? And we can see how these different strategies can be applied once you've plotted somebody's current state along this matrix. Okay, and of course, bring in the power of negotiation that you learned from this course, from other courses, from reading the book Getting to Yes, as I mentioned earlier, right? This is the process through which we're going to seek an acceptable rate of exchange for items that we own or control, right? We don't want to create a lose-lose, right? I prefer a win-win, right? It's possible. The whole movie, A Beautiful Mind, is based on the concept of a win-win scenario as opposed to a win-lose scenario, which was advocated for in the industrial age in the 18th and 19th centuries, right? So the art of negotiation, very powerful. And so we want to partner with people and even the team members. We want to make a team charter. Now that's separate from the project charter. So we have a project charter, which from the business documents, we build a charter, right? We're clarifying the scope and other constraints, and then we build a detailed plan. That's the project charter, very powerful. This I'm talking about is a team charter, where we all get together and determine what are our team goals. How are we going to resolve conflict, right? Put it on paper. If the team wants to address it themselves first, say so, right? And when we'll take breaks, maybe team lunches, etc. That's a team charter and can be a very powerful tool in addressing team conflict, right? But I mentioned partnering, always positive. especially subcontractors. Subcontractors, in my mind, often get left out. I worked for one company who refused to invite them to anything, even team lunches. And I said, I'll pay for them. They said, you can't do that in case they perceive themselves to be part of the regular team. And then legally they might have some claims to oh, you've got to be kidding. I can't build a team unless I include them. But you want to be careful. You want to comply by the rules of your corporation. There's no doubt. That's why I left them nuts. But I will say I understand. At least they had a reason for it. But still, you want to bring everybody together, make them feel like a part of the team, and understand what they want. These bullets to me are a little too simplistic. You want to talk to the subcontracting groups and their managers periodically and make sure that we're all clicking together, meeting each other's needs. Project partnering is a method of transforming the contractual relationship into some cooperative team effort. I love that. Project partnering, great concept, and should be used more often. So steps for that would be the project firm commits to the partnering, then all parties are going to implement the process together and do a joint review, etc. Now, and you can even set up a committee to address issues along the way, right? You could also create a 4-part agreement, which would include a joint evaluation of the project's progress, a method for resolving disagreements, continuous improvement, and support from senior manager. This really takes the concept of a team charter, which is how we get along, and expectation management, to a macro level, to a higher level, and applies the same concept up above along the way. Continue with the joint review. Now, chartering, the reason I say that is I like to differentiate from the team charter, which is nice to have and can resolve some of our conflict issues and our understanding. That's very different from our project charter. Our charter is a written agreement that outlines the specific at a high level. The charter is always high level. Remember, we're going from super high level, the business documents, to the charter, which is high level, but narrowing our mission, to the project plan, which is that focused, detailed approach. The project plan will not deviate from the charter or violate the charter or the business documents above it. So it's a very powerful document that you can use as a tool to resolve conflicts, say if somebody isn't cooperating or getting along. I've done that before. I brought in the team sponsor, which was a 3-star general, and I didn't dime anybody out. I didn't tell on anybody. I just said, sir, would you come to our meeting 10 minutes and share your vision? Even though it's already in the charter, some people, I think, on the team just need to hear it. And he went, sure. Came in, gave a spiel. Within a week or so, I was getting cooperation that I had hoped for, right? Because the signatory of the charter came and expressed the same vision, and they got on board. I mentioned scope change previously. Scope change, scope creep, scope gap. Those are your 3 worst enemies. Most projects fail because of scope. Either scope wasn't identified, bam, that's going to result in disaster, or the requirement was identified but not completed. And so you want to manage scope change, scope creep, and scope gap. And you can look up those terms and make some notes at your leisure. Again, back to negotiation. There's some concepts, but I really recommend the book Getting to Yes. And of course, the book addresses these along the way. And a principled negotiation. I agree with that wholeheartedly, right? Separate the people from the problem. Focus on interests, not on their current position. And come with options, right? And insist on objective criteria that you both agree to up front. Okay, that was fun. I'll see you online. Thanks, everybody.